Welcome everyone to the Town of Greater Napanee regular session of council for the 28th day of November 2023. Just before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that this evening's meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Town of Greater Napanee YouTube channel. We'll start it with our closed session rise and report. We'll look for a motion to rise and report from closed session that we had this evening. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. I will report that in closed session tonight, council approved the closed session minutes from November 14th, 2023, and received a confidential human resources report regarding collective bargaining and gave direction to staff. Look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. We'll be amending the agenda just slightly this evening to bring forward the staff report 8.1 BESS fire response information report of Chief Hammond prior to the reports that we had that we didn't get to on the 14th of November. So I'll look for a motion, Councillor Shank, to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Norrie, if there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Councillor Shank.
6.1. I have a family member that owns the property right adjacent to and I was told that even though there's no pecuniary interest in, it's really shady. It's more of a code of conduct, but I was told that I should declare conflict of interest for 6.1.
Great.
I won't be leaving because I still want to, I will not partake in any of the discussion, but I want to hear the discussion also. All right. Just because it's going to relate to other future BESS sites that are coming on.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Shank. Is there any other pecuniary interest? Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship, item 6.5, the utility bill forgiveness. I'm a member of the church.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. And I believe Councillor Norrie.
Ditto to that one, 6.5, parishioner and financial donator to the church.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Norrie. Is there any other further disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I'll move on to deputation. Scheduled deputation new items. I don't believe we have any, Madam Clerk. Deputations item on the agenda, and I don't believe we have any of those as well. Madam Clerk? No. Correspondence for items on the agenda. 5.3.1. Comments received November 14th through to the 21st of November 2023 regarding proposed energy projects. Agenda items 6.1 through to 6.4. I know we've got a number of articles on there. Is there anything that anybody wants to pull out and have any words with respect to those items of correspondence? Seeing none. 5.3.2 comments received November 22nd through November 28th, 2023 regarding the proposed energy projects. Agenda items 6.1 through 6.4. Is there any of those items of correspondence anybody wants to speak to at this point? Seeing none. Unfinished business. We'll move into the unfinished business, and I believe that 8.1 BESS fire response information, that would be Chief Hammond. Come on up, Chief. Oh, sorry, we need to note and receive the correspondence. Sorry, moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Thanks for keeping an eye on me. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor Hicks, and thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Chief Hammond. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So through your worship, my report is in front of you. We took the information, gathered all of your questions from previous meetings, and I hope that I capitalized on the short report in front of you to explain to you that the issues that have been brought before you, there are pros and cons to everything, including these BESS units. And I'll take any questions on the report in front of you at this time.
Sorry, thanks, Chief. Does anybody have any questions of Chief Hammond with respect to the report that's before us this evening? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Chief, during the report, you state that the fire department has been to lithium battery fires. Could you just explain the size, magnitude of what they were?
That's correct. So over the last 24 months, we've noticed an increase in lithium battery incidents, ranging from electric scooters, electric wheelchairs, iPads, phones. We haven't had any vehicle fires in our area, but we have, some of our fire departments in the area have responded to them. They range from lots of damage to zero damage. But again, these are a small scale battery fires, but we are responding to them now.
Thank you. And just one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Chief, could you explain to us how, if one of these containers did happen to catch on fire, what would be the protocol, how that would be put out?
Through your worship, so in my report, we've been issued a response guide on how to actually and actively respond to a BESS incident. It would depend on the size of the shipping container, the manufacturer of the actual storage container itself. Most of these units, I'm going to say all of the units that I've done the research on and any of the training that we've been able to take and garnish at this point have said that they have deflagration lids for explosive content. So the hydrogen gas that is given off by a battery pack burning is highly explosive if handled poorly or not, if it's contained too much. So a lot of the literature that is out there right now and best practices is not to put water on the fire. Support the other units in their present state. Our response to any of these facilities, we'll call them, will be very well laid out in their emergency response plans. That's all part of the legislative component. And I will remind ourselves, this is the application stage. So we can play the what if. At present level right now, we are comfortable with the application stage of these units. And that's what my report states.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Pennell. Is there, Councilor Nori?
Yes, Chief, just briefly, you mentioned pros and cons. Just give me an example of a con, please.
For sure. So some of the cons for these, excuse me, some of the cons for these that have been brought forward are that they can cause an environmental issue. That's a con. Absolutely, it's a con. When I've drilled down into some of the reports that were brought before you and cited through the States in Europe, Australia, the fire department that responded to those incidents made drastic mistakes. And that's through NIOSH. That's an American company that does all of the health and safety reporting for the fire service. So there's definitely issues with some of these units based on how we respond to the actual issue that's there. You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor Cower.
Just one question, Chief, and you may or may not have the information here in front of you. You received a call out my way the other day. What was your response time for that garage fire or shed fire?
So we're 18 minutes to Sherman's Point.
Pretty good. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Cower.
Through your worship,
Go ahead, Chief.
when our stations are staffed,
Yes.
when our stations are staffed. So after hours, it can be up to 23 minutes.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any other questions with respect to the chief's report? Seeing none, the only question I have, Chief, is we have some mutual aid agreements with our neighboring fire departments, and they seem to work fairly well. Did you want to expand a little bit on that?
Sure, through your worship. Again, as you, over the last 4 weeks, we had a very large fire in town. For those of you that showed up to watch the first 4 or 5 hours of that, you would have seen Kingston in town, you would have seen Loyalist. We had discussions about bringing some tankers in from the Bay of Quinte Mohawks to support us on the other side of the arena. We didn't get to that. So we have the ability to draw upon a large amount of resources in our area rather quickly. Loyalist has the Bath Station, which responds through an automatic aid agreement and the fire service agreement with us simultaneously. So if we're dispatched from Station 1 in Napanee and Station 3 in Dorland, Bath is also dispatched at the exact same time as us. So what we try to do is we try to infiltrate as many directions as we can on an incident from a variety of different geographical locations, which is all set up through our mutual aid agreement. And that's, we can draw resources from across the province if we require. And we would if we required them. And I would hope that, I'm not going to say hope, it will be flushed out in the emergency response plans for any of these facilities.
Great, thanks, Chief. And do we have any agreements? I know we do have some private organizations that actually respond to catastrophic events. One of them being GFL, that used to be Drainall. Do we have any type of agreements with them, or what's our working relationship with them?
So through your worship, we do have a working agreement with what was Drainall, now GFL. We also have agreements with CP. CP houses a foam trailer in the area that if we required it through our mutual aid coordinator, we could request that. But yes, we do have other agreements with commercial companies to assist us in the event we required it.
Great, thank you, Chief. Was there anything generated or motivated out of the questions that I had of the Chief? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information a report from the Greater Napanee Fire Department on the response to the BESS facilities. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on, growth and expansion, Boralex Lennox Battery Energy Storage Project request for municipal support resolution. And I believe Mr. Nobes, you're up. So go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. At this time, I don't have much to add beyond what is contained within the staff report. The request of the applicant is for a support resolution solely to gain points in a procurement process. If approved by council, the recommendation does not supersede any other provincial, federal, or municipal regulatory requirements and approvals in the process. This is very early in the stage, and this is solely to gain points in a procurement process. I believe council is well aware of where the project is located, the size. I can certainly go through that in more detail if council wishes, but I would be happy to answer any questions that council may have with regard to this application.
Thank you, Michael. Is there any questions or comments with respect to Michael's report or his presentation? Seeing none, the only question I have, Michael, is that, and you did mention it, that this is very early on in this process. Maybe you can give us a high level explanation as to that if these folks were successful with respect to an application, what follows that? Where are we heading from there? So,
sure. So, Your Worship, the land use is permitted. So our zoning permits this use today, given the definitions of what a public use is. It fits into that definition. Many other jurisdictions, municipalities in the province are viewing that definition the same as staff are. So it's a permitted use as of right. However, the site plan details that would follow, so a site plan control application would be required to the municipality, which would encompass all aspects of the detailed design, whether it be servicing, stormwater management, fire protection, groundwater impacts, hydrogeological review, spills action plan, ensuring there's adequate insurance, liability insurance for any contamination that may result from a catastrophic incident, geotechnical reports, landscape plans, noise studies, traffic management during construction, decommissioning. All of that level of detail would follow, and the proponents haven't had the time to undertake those vast number of studies. So that level of detail is what would follow if a proposal is awarded a contract by the IESO. So we still very much have quite a good level of control at the municipal level. There are still provincial requirements from the Ministry of the Environment, potentially Ministry of Natural Resources if required, given proximity to certain features. Conservation authorities are very much involved. Electrical Safety Authority, the list goes on. It becomes a very well-rounded review from many number of agencies. So I hope that helps answer some questions in regards to that, but that very heavy detailed review would follow thereafter to ensure that these sites can adequately function.
Great, thanks, Michael. Was there anything that was motivated or generated questions with respect to my question? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Carver.
Yeah, so just to verify, Michael, a vote tonight, one way or the other, does not put a battery plant in place. There's all kinds of other things that would have to happen before that took place.
Through your worship, that is correct. So firstly, the IESO would be rendering decisions on applications that are received through this procurement process. And if the council is agreeable to the applicant's request for a support resolution, this simply gains them additional points and weighted criteria for the IESO to ultimately make a decision. The IESO may award all or none of these projects before council this evening. And that's ultimately what's being requested tonight, is just simply a support resolution to gain points. It's not an automatic approval. But again, the IESO is the administrator and approval authority of the contracts, and the town would be the approval authority of the site functionality and details that would follow thereafter.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Carver. Was there anything else? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship. I would just like to thank Michael and Jessica both for keeping us all straight over the past month. And Michael, it's a very detailed report, and I, for one, really appreciate it. And also the time you took to answer all my questions. So thank you very much for that.
Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. Through you, just a couple of comments that I have here. Is that back when the Green Energy Act was out, we saw an influx of solar farms, and we had no say of where these solar farms could go, and they took up a good chunk of prime agriculture land. I have a report here in front of me that Ontario Power is receiving less than 1% from the solar, and we can just drive around and see our large solar fields and what they've done. Personally, myself, I think that if prime agriculture land is ever going to be used for something other than agriculture, it should be used for housing, but I might be a little bit biased on that. I also believe that these battery energy storage plants should be housed at the place of generation of that. So saying at generating stations. So with that being said, I do recognize that the project that we're talking about right now is zoned for that, but I just wanted to get this out to, as Councillor Shank is not going to be talking about this, but he did say that he wanted to hear what's going on. That was my concerns on there, and I'm still concerned, even though listening to the chief, I'm still concerned of the amount of distance that these things are going to be located off of a main throughway. And my other thoughts are too, reading a report here that Ontario is going to be looking for more of these things. And I think that if we deem ourselves as a willing host of these, that we're going to see more and more of these projects being proposed and asked of, much similar to the way that that our solar farms came up. So those are just my comments for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Is there anything else that anybody wishes to speak about with respect to this report this evening? If not, I'll read the staff recommendation and we can vote on it. I don't know if anybody is interested in, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, your worship, as I requested earlier today, I would just like to make a blanket request for items 6.1 through 6.4 that we have a recorded vote for each item.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. You'll put Madam Clerk to work. So I do have a staff recommendation, if there's nothing further, that council receive for information the growth and expansion Boralex Lennox Battery Energy Storage Project request for municipal support resolution report. And further, that council support the proposal from Boralex Inc. or a direct or indirect affiliate thereof, the proponent, for the development, construction, and operation of the proposed 400 megawatt or up to 400 megawatt battery energy storage long-term LT1 reliability project within the town of Greater Napanee on lands known as Part Lot 12, Concession 1, Fredericksburg, Town of Greater Napanee, known as PIN 45106-0367 LT, the municipal lands for the Lennox Battery Energy Storage Project, and further that this resolution's sole purpose is to enable the proponent to receive rated criteria points under LT1 RFP or to satisfy its obligations under any awarded LT1 contract and may be used for the purpose of any may not be used for the purpose of any other form of approval in relation to the proposal or long-term reliability project, or for any other purpose, rated criteria points will be used to rank the proponent's proposal in relation to other proposals received by the IESO under the LT1 RFP. And further, this resolution of municipal support does not supersede any applicable permits or approvals under applicable laws and regulations that may be required for a particular long-term reliability project. This resolution shall be only used for LT1 RFP proposals after its adoption by council. Sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful. So moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I believe, Madam Clerk, it's up to you.
Ward 2, Councillor Hicks.
No.
Ward 3, Councillor Pennell.
No.
Ward 4, Councillor Norrie.
Yes.
Ward 5, Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on, growth and expansion, EDF Renewables Bethany Battery Energy Storage Project request for municipal support resolution. And Michael, I believe you're up next.
Thank you, Worship. Nothing further to add. I will note that staff are aware of a large number of individuals that are concerned about this particular project, given its location and proximity to water bodies, other residential lands, etc. The same requirements would apply. Detailed investigation, detailed review would still be forthcoming. That would be within the municipality's control. And that level of site plan detail has not yet been afforded the time to be undertaken, given the time in which the LT1 process began until today. So that level of detail would follow if this project were awarded a contract by the IESO. I don't believe there's anything further that I'd like to add, but I am certainly open to any questions particular to this site.
Thanks, Michael. Is there any questions of Michael with respect to his report or his presentation before us this evening? Yeah, Councillor Shank.
It's not so much of a question, it's more of a comment, but you can tell me if I'm off base or not. This is only a point system so far. I have great familiarity with the farm. I had farmed the land adjacent to this farm, so I understand where the limestone is, and it's not prime ag land by any means of the imagination. The distance away, now you have Atura Power, Ontario Power Generation, but now it's Portland Energy. that's going to try, is proposing a battery energy storage system that's probably maybe 1,000 feet away from Lake Ontario. This is 1.2 kilometers back. Plus they've proven there's site plan agreement for berms and water and Ministry of Environment, like you went through. So I just wanted to confirm, and my thought process of what I'm saying is correct, or am I missing something along this line? Or should I be concerned about any other issues?
Through your worship, no, your train of thought is correct. So if you're looking at it through the lens of an environmental contamination perspective, there are existing laws in place that govern the activities around when such contamination occurs, and if there's migration offsite, the Ministry of the Environment is the enforcement authority to ensure that any of those environmental concerns and issues are addressed. What we would have the control over, and what I understand what the IESO requires, is that proponents for these applications must maintain adequate liability insurance that covers environmental damage to that degree. So both first party and third party. So if there were an issue where there's contamination that enters into the groundwater and migrates off site, that the proponent would be required and their insurance provider would be required to remediate that type of an issue. So we have that ability to require that they have that. I understand that the IESO is also requiring that to be in effect.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
And Mike, also, is it under the site plan agreement also that we can impose a bond that when the life cycle is done, that it be brought back to its original state with all the soil analysis and everything else through the environment, that a bond has to be put up, so they can't, if they fled and said, nah, I can't make any money, went bankrupt or whatever, that there's money already there to reclaim it and put it back into its original state?
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah. So effectively a decommissioning bond, that yes, that would be, it would be through the site plan agreement, but a separate agreement. So by signing the site plan agreement, it would bind the proponent to enter into a separate agreement to that effect. The decommissioning can't be built into the site plan agreement, but we can say enter into a separate agreement with us to achieve that effect. Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there any other questions or comments with respect to this report or the presentation? If not, bear with me. We do have a staff recommendation that council receive for information the growth and expansion EDF Renewables Bethany Battery Energy Storage Project request for the Municipal Support Resolution Report. And further, that council support the proposal from EDF Renewables or a direct or indirect affiliate thereof, the proponent, for the development, construction, and operation of the proposed 250 megawatt or up to 250 megawatt battery energy storage long-term LT1 reliability project within the town of Greater Napanee on lands known as Part Lots 8 and 9, Concession 5, Fredericksburg, town of Greater Napanee, now known as PIN 45111-0244 LT, the municipal lands, for their Bethany Battery Energy Storage Project. And further, that this resolution's sole purpose is to enable the proponent to receive rated criteria points under the LT1 RFP or to satisfy its obligations under any awarded LT1 contract, and may not be used for the purpose of any other form of approval in relation to the proposal or long-term reliability project, or for any other purpose. Rated criteria points will be used to rank the proponent's proposal in relation to other proposals received by the IESO under the LT1 RFP. And further, this resolution of municipal support does not supersede any applicable permits or approvals under the applicable laws and regulations that may be required for a particular long-term reliability project. This resolution shall only be used for LT1 RFP proposals after its adoption by council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I believe, Madam Clerk, we've been asked to have a recorded vote.
Ward 1, Councillor Shank.
Yes.
Ward 2, Councillor Hicks.
No.
Ward 3, Counselor Pennell.
No.
Ward 4, Counselor Nori.
Yes.
Ward 5, Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
that motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to 6.3, growth and expansion, Atura Power Napanee Generating Station Battery Energy Storage Project Request for the municipal support resolution. Michael, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. This proposal is for phase 2 of 2 proposed by Atura Power. The IESO had granted a previous 250 megawatt contract on these lands earlier in this year, and this application before council this evening is for phase 2 by Atura Power. We had discussed this in some level of detail during the Committee of Adjustment deliberations, but there would be additional berming on the east side of the site. The noise studies would be undertaken to ensure other lands within the vicinity are not negatively impacted, and if they are, then mitigation would be provided on the property. There would be great level of detail and review undertaken by Cataraqui Conservation, given the proximity to our intake protection zone for our Napanee drinking water system. It's located in fairly close proximity to this site, and ensuring that the source water protection regulations are achieved. The Cataraqui Conservation would be undertaking that review, as well as looking at stormwater management plans and potential impacts to water courses that traverse the site. Again, we have not yet received a site plan application for this site, but the proponents would be required to undertake the same level of detail and review and studies and reporting and design drawings as the previous 2 applications that were discussed this evening.
Thank you, Michael. Is there any questions? Councillor Shank.
Mike, this is under expansion, the growth and expansion of Atura Power. But earlier under the Committee of Adjustment, it's under Portland. Is this going to be a conflict? Is this under the same business?
Through your worship, my understanding is that OPG is the overall parent company. Atura Power is a subsidiary, but I believe they're operating under Portland's Energy Center. So it's Portland's Energy Center owns the land, but Atura Power is the name, the trade name, if you will, effectively. So Portland's Energy Center has always been Atura Power since the purchase from TransCanada.
Great, thanks, Councillor Shank. Is there any other questions or comments of Michael or the report? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment is that we do have to be very concerned of the water intake for drinking water, of course, and that I'm sure that will be handled. But for this particular project, I'm pleased to say that's on industrial land, and it is going to be housed at the point of generation. So I'll be voting yes for this one.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other comments or questions with respect to the report or Michael's presentation? Seeing none, and bear with me. That council received for information the growth and expansion Atura Power Napanee Battery Energy Storage Phase 2 project request for municipal support and resolution report. And further, that council support the proposal from Atura Power or a direct or indirect affiliate thereof, the proponent, for the development, construction, and operation of the proposed 250 megawatts or up to 250 megawatt battery energy storage long-term LT1 reliability project within the town of Greater Napanee on lands known as part lots 19 to 21, concession 1, Fredericksburg, town of Greater Napanee, now known as PIN 45107-0074 LT, the municipal lands for the Napanee Battery Energy Storage Phase 2 project. And further, that this resolution's sole purpose is to enable the proponent to receive rated criteria points under the LT1 RFP or to satisfy its obligations under any awarded LT1 contract, and may not be used for the purpose of any other form of approval in relation to the proposal or the long-term reliability project, or for any other purpose. Rated criteria points will be used to rank the proponent's proposal in relation to the other proposals received by the IESO under LT1 RFP. And further, this resolution of municipal support does not supersede any applicable permits or approvals under applicable laws and regulations that may be required for a particular long-term reliability project. This resolution shall only be used for LT1 RFP proposals after its adoption by council. And Madam Clerk, I believe you're up next. Sorry, I guess we should move in second. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. And now, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Ward 1, Counselor Schenk.
Yes.
Ward 2, Counselor Hicks.
Yes.
3, Counselor Pennell.
Yes.
Ward 4, Counselor Norrie.
Yes.
Ward 5, Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. 6.4, growth and expansion, Atura Power Napanee Generating Station Natural Gas Turbine Expansion Request for Municipal Support Resolution. And again, you're up, Michael.
Thank you, Worship. Nothing further to add beyond the contents of the staff report, but certainly open to questions. I will reiterate that this land does have a site-specific zoning, so it's zoned general industrial with a site-specific zoning to allow for non-nuclear power generation. So gas, the existing natural gas turbine that's operating there today is permitted as of right in the zoning. This proposed expansion would be in line with that existing zoning on the property. So I certainly would be open to answering any questions that council might have. Again, if this project were awarded a contract by the IESO, further detailed analysis would be undertaken through site plan control, and Ministry of the Environment approvals would be required given the emissions that would be leaving the site, and amendments to any environmental compliance approvals would be required to ensure air emissions are meeting regulatory limits, and administrative provisions would be built in to that ECA if those limits were to be exceeded.
Thank you, Michael. Is there any questions of Michael with respect to his presentation or his report? I'll go to Deputy Calver first and then to Councillor Norrie.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for your report. Just to be clear, this is not a new plant. This is an addition to what's already there.
That is, through your worship, that is correct. There is an existing natural gas fired facility creating electricity, and this would be an expansion to that use.
No, thank you. I've just received a lot of emails today, opposed to a third plant, and I knew it was an addition, but I just wanted that clarified that it's not a third plant.
I will note it would be another turbine mechanism, if you will, but that the actual site is functioning today with this type of power generation.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Deputy Mayor Calver. Councillor Norrie.
Basically was my question. Thank you from ads I heard on the media, and that just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Norrie. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Again, just a statement here. Again, in a report that I have on my desk here, that nuclear supplies 54% of Ontario's power. Gas is at 10%, or sorry, hydro, which is water, is at 26%. Gas is at 10% and wind is at 9%. So with the Lennox generating station coming offline as a support station and Pickering coming off the line, I believe that we are going to need more power than what wind and solar, and by the way, solar again is less than 1%. I also recognize the fact that if we have more battery storage units, then we could use the wind more and house that. So I understand that as well. But I just think in the very near future, we're going to need a lot of energy. And so I just wanted to make that statement. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there anything further? Any questions, comments, or concerns with respect to Michael's report or his presentation? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the growth and expansion Atura Power and Napanee Generating Station natural gas turbine expansion request for municipal support resolution report, and further that council support the proposal from Atura Power or a direct or indirect affiliate thereof, the proponent, for the development, construction, and operation of the proposed 450 megawatt or up to 450 megawatt natural gas turbine expansion long-term LT1 reliability project within the town of Greater Napanee on lands known as part lots 17 to 22, concession 1, Fredericksburg, town of Greater Napanee, now known as PIN 45107-0075 LT, the municipal lands, for their natural gas turbine expansion project, and further that this resolution's sole purpose is to enable the proponent to receive rated criteria points under LT1 RFP or to satisfy its obligations under any awarded LT1 contract, and may not be used for the purpose of any other form of approval in relation to the proposal or long-term reliability project, or for any purpose rated point criteria points will be used to rank the proponent's proposal in relation to other proposals received by the IESO under LT1 RFP. And further, this resolution of municipal support does not supersede any applicable permits or approvals under applicable laws and regulations that may be required for a particular long-term reliability project. This resolution shall only be used for LT1 RFP proposals after its adoption by council. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Norrie. And Madam Clerk, I believe we do have a recorded vote.
Ward 1, Counselor Shank.
Yes.
Ward 2, Counselor Hicks.
No.
Ward 3, Counselor Pennell.
Yes.
Ward 4, Counselor Norrie.
Yes.
Ward 5, Counselor Martin.
Yes, excuse me, yes.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on, request for utility bill forgiveness. We believe we have a couple of counselors that have declared a conflict of interest, so we'll just allow them to leave the room. Yeah, actually, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We do have some people moving around in the council chambers, so thanks. At 8:10. Welcome back, everybody. Moving on to item 6.5 on our agenda, request for utility forgiveness. And I think, Madam Clerk, are you speaking to this or, oh, Mr. Murphy. Go ahead, Nathan.
Through your worship, I don't have a whole lot to add from this. Madam Clerk did a pretty solid job putting this together, laying it out well for council. I just do want to make the comment that this can be a slippery slope here, and staff do have some concerns if forgiveness is given in any circumstance. However, if we're going to lead down this path, it would be far better off for staff to have a policy to back that. I think there's a pretty well laid out policy here attached, but like we said, there could be some adverse impact to budgets if it is given. So I'm happy to take questions on this or go into more detail if needed, but I think it is well laid out for you in this report here, as well as a draft policy.
Thanks, Nathan. Do any of the counselors have any questions? Go ahead, Councilor Brunel.
Thank you, worship, through you. Nathan, so most definitely there is an avenue that we could look at where we do not forgive the bill. However, we do come up with an interest-free payment plan, correct?
Through your worship, that is currently something that is in place. So we do repayment plans with residents all the time on circumstances like this, or certainly just in financial distress, I guess, to some degree. So we are constantly doing repayment agreements on utility bills on a frequent basis. So that is something we currently offer as well. So we could extend, if they had one significant bill or two significant bills, extend the period that they could pay that back on at a reduced rate to make up the difference there. So that is certainly already in play, and there's no intent to change that at this time.
Thank you. Just for clarification, when you say reduced rate, is that reduced interest rate or reduced payback rate?
Through your worship. So there would be no interest rate on it, is my understanding. If they enter into a payment agreement, there's no reduced rate on the bill either. So when I say reduced rate, I just mean they're not paying it all at once, I guess. I should use a different term, but a reduced amount for that time period, and then they would pay it back over an extended period of time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No worries.
Councillor Martin, then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Cower.
Nathan, is staff concerned that if we do a one-off with that, everybody's afraid that we're going to have to do it with everybody? Like, is there a lot of this happening? I mean, sometimes I think we need the discretion of being able to decide sometimes, because like in this case, it's a church and I know they do worthwhile work in the community. And sometimes I look at things like that as opposed to maybe an individual or private person. So I'm just, I know what you're saying about having a policy for everybody, a set policy, but I'd still like to have a little bit of wiggle room that we can decide on each individual occurrence myself. That's all I'm saying.
Through your worship, staff recommendation would be to not do it on an individual basis, because then we get into a slippery slope of who knows who and subjective. And I think that's the concern here. How frequently we get this, I can't comment myself on how often we get these complaints. It's well laid out in the report that there was a number of requests over an extended period of time. But I would expect if you talk to our utilities clerks or our staff who work the front counter, there's a number of people who come in probably on a weekly, if not daily basis, and ask, you guys do not offer any relief in certain circumstances. So I think that would be the concern at this point in time, especially with a one-off. It really opens the door for others to come in and say, well, you offered it to them, why not us? Obviously, not always the case for staff to explain that, but I don't think that's a position staff would want to put council in. And that's kind of where we've come to with the policy, kind of give some room to operate that, but also kind of have some guidelines around that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, Nathan, somewhat, but I would still like a little bit of flexibility there. Just I don't think everything fits the same mold all the time. That's all. And I just think that if we do have a policy, I think we should have still a little bit of flexibility in that policy, but that's just my opinion.
Thanks, Councilor Martin. Deputy Mayor Calver.
Through you, your worship. Nathan, I had it written down, my notes from when this first come up. Can you tell me how much it is again of the water bill, the price of it or cost?
Through your worship, I'll have to go check. Sorry, and this is just more broad terms, this report, but I'll have to go back and check with the previous one. I apologize.
Okay, yeah, I didn't bring it with me either. Thank you.
I think Madam Clerk may be able to help us. Okay.
Through your worship, while I'm searching there, just to Councillor Martin's point, in the policy, it does state responsibilities. Council of the Corporation of the Town of Greater Napanee. Council is responsible for A, approval of this policy and any amendments thereto, and B, hearing any applications for relief that fall outside the scope of this policy and determining the amount of relief, if any, that will be granted in those circumstances. So I think the policy somewhat does cover off what you're referring to, Councillor Martin, and that might help with what you're speaking about there.
Thanks, Nathan. We'll just set this down for a bit while you find that information if you've got it reasonably handy. Yeah, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through your worship, I will just add a comment while Nathan is looking that information up. There are a number of options before council in this report. And I would just say that the draft policy that is presented as one of those options is incomplete. There are a number of areas that are highlighted looking for additional specific council input. So there's what's in front of you, even if you do go that route, is not a for sure that it would look exactly like that. It's just to start a discussion point of what one could look like based on what we've seen in the few other municipalities that do have these types of policies in place.
Thanks, Madam Clerk.
Through your worship, I apologize for the delay there. So the total relief would be around $3,800. That would be if it was full relief. So going on, if you're looking at this policy that has been set up in here, that would not be the amount that would be refunded there. It would be far less than that, under 50% of that.
Great. Thanks, Nathan. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
So this is my thoughts. I believe it's just sewage relief that we had in the past, correct?
Through your worship, that is correct.
Yeah. So the point is, it's a nonprofit. It's a church. They only do good in the community. It's not that they're in it to make money. All right. A lot of churches are struggling as it is today. I'm in favor of granting at least sewage relief to a nonprofit organization. It's only helping the church, and it's not like the church is being occupied 7 days a week like a residence or a commercial business that's open 7 days a week or anything like that. So I'm in favor of, if you would like me to make a motion to that effect, or would you like, or if you want to come back to have the correct wording, that's up to the powers to be or whatever, but I'll make the motion that the sewage relief is granted for the person that came in that asked, for the church that came in and asked for some relief. It's not that it's being occupied as the one or two of the individuals that came, they went ahead and explained what happened, where it was, how it happened, that it wasn't recognizable, you know what I mean, unless you were outside and listening really well. So it wasn't a blatant disregard on their part of whatever. And it's a nonprofit, it's a church. So I believe that we should give at least a sewage relief.
Great, thanks, Councillor Shank. I think, yeah, Madam Clerk is going to help clarify that for us.
So through your worship, feel free to correct this if this draft does not fully encompass what you are wanting in this motion, but that council affirm as a general policy, the past council resolution number 91/13, that the practice of providing sewer relief for high utility bills due to leaks remain terminated, and that the only relief to be provided be through the continuation of customer-friendly payment plans. And further, that council grant a specific exemption to this policy to the St. Mary Magdalene Church on the grounds that it is a nonprofit organization that is not occupied 7 days per week. Are there any other specific reasons that this one should be considered? And further, that council authorize a sewer relief adjustment in accordance with the terms of the former sewer relief program to this applicant.
I think you'd have to be a Philadelphia lawyer to understand that one, but I get your gist. Thanks, Jessica. I think those were very well done. I just didn't want it to be widely known that everybody could come in and ask for sewer relief. But in this especially occasion with a nonprofit being a church, I think you've addressed that in the motion, and I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there further comments, questions, or concerns? And I'll just weigh in that, Madam Clerk, there is some indication that maybe our policy does need to be updated or upgraded. Am I correct with that?
Through your worship, if there is a desire that in general, the rule is still as was intended with that motion in 2013, that we do not do this. And only in specific circumstances as a one-off where there are specific reasons why council believes this is in the best interest of the broader community. I believe the motion as presented captures that intent.
And I agree with you. I'm just thinking, moving forward, is our policy with respect to what you just read out sufficient moving forward, or do we need to clean that up and to add to it, I guess is the best way, especially since it's a 2013 motion.
Through your worship, staff can look into that matter. We do also want to formalize the customer-friendly repayment agreements, so we can probably do something with this at that time when we're bringing that finance policy forward.
Sorry, through your worship, am I interpreting this correctly? So when you're saying reaffirm that it means that there is no longer relief. Okay, so there is no policy in place technically, it is just no longer relief.
Through your worship, the motion as I interpreted Councillor Shank's comments and read out to the floor here is that the policy is that there is no sewer relief unless council grants a specific exemption due to reasons why council believes that the specific exemption is in the best interest of the broader community.
Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. I also want to be a little bit careful about the word or the use of not-for-profit, because I think the residential use would also be for not-for-profit. So somehow we'd have to, we should be mindful of that as well.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Martin.
I'm a little bit confused about what, is that, are we granting this particular applicant this, or are we setting policy? Is this our policy going forward? It got a little bit convoluted there, so I'm a little bit.
I think maybe well, Madam Clerk, did you want to clarify that, or we want Councillor Shank to speak to it?
So my intent is you're going to have, unless it's not for profit. Like, 'cause if you own a house and you sell a house, you're gonna sell it at a profit. So basically, if you want to call it something else, then call it whatever you want. But a church is for the broader good of the community. All right, so that's why I said it's a not-for-profit. They're not occupied 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So all I'm saying is in this specific occasion, all right, for this nonprofit or this church, all right, that we offer the sewage relief. All right, so they get a reduction on when they had a problem. So whatever the percentage of it being, that's what we offered in the past. So we're not changing any, we're just basically making an exemption into our policy that this, church, non-for-profit, broader good for the community, that they get a sewage relief, and that's it. So if somebody else has a problem or somebody else is a not-for-profit, I don't want to muddy the waters, but I just wanted to say, okay, everybody can have a, come in and get sewage relief. I'm just saying with this specific occasion, and it's what it is, it's a church, you know what I mean, that they get the relief.
Thank you, Counselor Shank. Madam Clerk, do you have what you need, and is that going to suffice for what we need to deal with this evening?
Through your worship, I believe that I do have what I need. I don't know if council would like to have the motion read again before voting.
Probably not a bad idea. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
The motion is that council receive for information the request for utility bill forgiveness report, and further that council affirm as a general policy the past council resolution number 9113 that the practice of providing sewer relief for high utility bills due to leaks remain terminated, and that the only relief to be provided be through the continuation of customer-friendly payment plans, and further that council grant a specific exemption to this policy to the St. Mary Magdalene Church on the grounds that this exemption is in the best interest of the broader community because the applicant is a not-for-profit which provides services to the community and because the building is not occupied continuously. And further, the council authorize a sewer relief adjustment in accordance with the terms of the prior sewer relief policy to this applicant.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk, is everybody clear on the resolution? I see some thumbs up, so I think we are. We do have a resolution on the floor. We'll call for the vote if there's nothing further. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks, and we'll just wait till we get the other councillors back in the room. Welcome back, Councillor Norrie and Councillor Hicks. Moving on to 6.6, Integrity Commissioner Services Reappointment. And I believe, Madam Clerk, that's yours.
Through your worship, I don't have a lot to add to this report. I did just want to note that staff do recommend the 2-year reappointment on the grounds that it keeps us synchronized with the other lower tiers and with the county. But that if council would like to give the direction that when this comes back up again in 2 years, that we not automatically consider a reappointment, but go out for public tender, that is certainly direction that I would be willing to take at this time.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Is there any questions or comments or concerns from Madam Clerk with respect to her presentation or her report? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, through your worship. I think that's a great idea that the next time that this comes about, that we should at least explore our options and go out and see what's out there that can be provided to us.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there anything further? Seeing none, and I don't know if you have the answer to this question, Madam Clerk, but do we know how long our neighboring lower tiers and our upper tier, what their contract is with this law firm?
So through your worship, the proposal is that this is a joint, well, I guess not a joint agreement, but that everyone has the agreement on the same terms.
So everybody else is going to be at that 2-year term as well then.
Yes, through your worship. So the other municipalities may not agree to go out for tender when we do, but at least when we have that initial consultation of what are your councils wanting to do here, I can tell them our council has directed that we are going to look at our options this time around.
Yeah, great. Okay, no, that's good. Thank you. Is there anything out of that that anyone who wants to have any conversations about? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation to receive for information legislative services, integrity commissioner services reappointment report, and further that council authorize that Eric Boralex be reappointed for a 2-year term from January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2025 to provide the integrity commissioner services for the town of Greater Napanee, and further that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Eric Boralex for the provision of the integrity commissioner services. Does that cover it, Madam Clerk, or do we want to add in there that the council will direct that this service be publicly tendered prior to the next renewal date in 2025?
I will leave that to the discretion of the person making the motion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's see if we who's going to move this first. Moved by Councillor Hicks and seconded by Councillor Shank. And is that to obviously for the 2-year term? And to vote for RFP after the 2-year term?
Yeah.
Is that good for the seconder, Councillor Shank? Perfect. Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. We'll call the vote. All in favor of the vote? The motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Lennox and Addington Ridge Runners Memorandum of Understanding. Is that yours, Madam Clerk?
So through your worship, I believe the report outlines the question at hand. Staff are supportive of this request from the Ridge Runners and do have an additional proposal to the council authorized staff to automatically renew this agreement unless there's any further substantial changes to its terms. But again, that is at council's discretion, how often you would like to see this come back.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Council, is there any questions or comments with respect to Madam Clerk? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
I just want to move staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation. Thanks, Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. The administrative consent agenda. And we do have a fairly lengthy consent agenda, but we will go through article by article, and if there's some conversations that we want to have, we can do that. So first up is the council minutes, regular session of council, October 24th, 2023 and November 14th, 2023, special session of council, October 26th, 2023 and November 2nd, 2023 and November 16th, 2023. Is there anything in those council minutes that anybody wants to have any discussions about? Seeing none. Committee minutes, Downtown Advisory Committee, Recreation Advisory Committee, Municipal Heritage Committee, and the Arts Advisory Committee. Are there any things in those committee reports that anybody wants to highlight or share with council? Seeing none. Appeals Committee minutes, the minutes for the Appeals Committee on November 8th, 2023. Is there anything in that report that the council wants to share or speak to? Correspondence for information items dated November 14th, 2023. Are there any correspondence for informations that council would like to speak to in those reports? Seeing none. Correspondence for information items dated November 28th, 2023. Is there anything in the correspondence for information on November 28th that council would like to speak to? Seeing none, the 2023 quarterly financial operating report Q3. Is there anything in that report that council would like to speak to? Seeing none, funding of East Street reconstruction. Is there anything in the funding of the East Street reconstruction that council would like to speak to with respect to that report? Seeing none. Information update, outstanding budget resolutions. Is there anything in that report that council would like to speak to? Seeing none, proclamation request, National Epilepsy Awareness Day. Is there anything there that council wants to speak to? Community and Corporate Services Activity Report. Is there anything in that activity report that council would like to speak to, or is there anything in that activity report that staff would like to highlight and speak to? Seeing none, activity report, Financial Services, November 2023. Is there anything in that report that council would like to have a conversation about, or is there any staff that would like to have any conversations with respect to that report? Seeing none, activity report, Fire Department, November 2023. Is there anything within that report that council would like to talk about, or the Fire Department would like to highlight? Activity report, Growth and Expansion, November 2023. Is there anything in that report council would like to have a conversation about, or staff would like to highlight? Seeing none. Activity report, Infrastructure Services, November 2023. With respect to that activity report, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to ask regarding the drinking water external audit that was produced on November 17th. I'm just asking if a copy of that will be brought to council.
I think, Christy, can you comment on that?
Through your worship, we can provide the actual external audit report if you, if council so wishes to see it. The intent here was just to save a staff report and just give a quick update in the activity report. But if you'd like to see the full external audit, we can certainly provide that.
I would, and the reasoning for that is that council is responsible for our drinking water, and I would just like to read it. And I always read those reports, and I would like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell, and I know that's duly noted. Activity report, Legislative Services, November 2023. Is there anything that council would like to speak to with respect to that? And Madam Clerk, did you want to comment any further on that report? Seeing none. Access E11 report, October 2023. With respect to the Access E11 report, is there anything council would like to discuss with respect to that report? And I believe maybe Madam Clerk could probably answer some questions if there is anything on that. She will do her best. Is there any, seeing no comments or questions or concerns? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, I do have one question, and that is regarding feeding of wildlife. Can I get some, like, is this feeding the geese down at the park, or what? Like, what complaint is that?
So through your worship, I'm not going to get into any specifics, but council did pass a bylaw, I believe in 2019, that prohibits within the urban water and sewer service area intentionally leaving out food for wildlife, which is defined as non-domesticated animals, in a way that creates or attracts a public nuisance. So yes, that's what that bylaw is about.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks and Madam Clerk. I believe we've got to the end of our consent agenda. We're looking for a motion to note and receive all of those reports that we just. Thank you, Councillor Shank. Seconded by Councillor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Items for consideration. We've already dealt with 8.1. 8.2, emergency contract work during fire investigation of 170 York Street. I think the deputy mayor or deputy chief, did you want to comment or make any comments with respect to that report?
Through you, your worship, I'm just here to answer any questions that council might have.
Great, thanks, Deputy Chief. Is there any questions of the Deputy Chief? Okay, I have Councillor Pennell and then Councillor Shank.
Thank you, worship. Through you, Deputy Chief, I'm just wondering, is there any cost recovery that we can do on this if it is found to be arson and the suspect is found guilty?
Through you, your worship, in speaking with chief today, he said there is a mechanism. He's going to investigate that in the next few weeks to see what we can do for that. So he said there is something that we can do. So he's going to look into it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pennell and Councillor Shank. I thinking that was probably your question.
Quote me if I'm wrong, James, that part of it OPP, because they requested also, so they're gonna be going after a certain portion. That's just the total bill.
Yeah,
right?
that was through your worship. That was the total bill. On
So-
that company that we did pick was requested through the OFM based on their expertise for dealing with suspicious fires. We wanted to make sure that we had a wholesome and a very reputable company complete that work so that we didn't hinder. And we wanted to assist the OFM with their investigation. I think by getting that company, it certainly provided that.
Exactly. So the point is that the cost recovery through the insurance or through if he's found guilty, you know what I mean? There's going to be other ones. And the OPP is going to assume, from what I understand, also a portion of that bill also.
That's, sorry, go ahead, Deputy Chief. Yeah, that's sort of my understanding. It's, there are a number of options available to us as far as the cost recovery goes. And I think that the chief is going to explore all of those options.
Yeah, through your worship. Yes, he is.
Great. Is there anything else with respect to the emergency contract work, fire investigation? Seeing none, we have a recommendation to note and receive the report from the fire department. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Infrastructure Services, Lake Ontario Pumping Station Pump and Motor Replacement. And I see Christy coming to the front, so come on up, Christy.
Through you, worship. You have the report before you, and I don't need to go into too much detail, but a few points I would just like to make is that there's 2 low lift pumps at our Lake Ontario pumping station that provide the raw water from Lake Ontario to our raw water reservoir and then into our Aldefo water treatment plant. One of those has reached its a significant runtime, and we're looking to replace that pump and motor. This was approved as a capital item within the 2023 budget, utilities budget. The reason for the delay on this was we were waiting to have the raw water reservoir back online to allow us a bit of capacity to pull the pump and basically to give us some time should issues arise during the change out. So we're just looking for council's approval to sole source the pump. And the reason for this is staff believe that it makes the most sense to replace with a very similar or like for like piece of equipment rather than getting into changing the mechanics of where the pump's going to go and the mechanical parts of that. So we are requesting an increase of $7,300, and that can be funded from utilities reserves. And I am available for any questions.
Thanks, Christy. Is there any questions for Christy with respect to her report or presentation? Deputy Mayor Calver, and then I'll go to Councillor Shank.
Through your worship. So now that we've got the water reservoir fixed and up to speed up there, what kind of time frame do we actually have between all the water reservoirs if something goes astray during this?
Through you, worship. I can't give you a specific timeline off the top of my head. It would really depend on what's going on in the system. But to give you a bit of background, we do have the treated water storage tank on Highway 2, and then our treated water storage tower, which we try to keep full at most times. So there is quite an amount of time during the day, depending, sometimes during the night. Depends how the operator's running the plant, but that the plant and the low lifts down at the lake are shut off. And then again, we have the capacity or additional capacity now that the other part of the raw water reservoir on the hill is in operation. That gives us a bit of time before we would need to pull from those pumps at the lake.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Shank.
I would suggest to everybody on council, if you've never been into that pumping station, is to go ahead and take a look. I stopped there, maybe I saw one of the mechanics working, and so I stopped in just to take a look and just to refresh myself. And it's quite a lift. I deal with a lot of irrigation pumps and a lot of pumps and stuff like that, but just to see the vertical pump and then how one was leaking a bit, and I was going, oh, how would you ever replace this? And you see the hole in the roof. So it's quite encompassing. But you're shopping locally and you're replacing something, so you're not going to sure you're sole sourcing, but you're not going to have to change all the mechanics on everything else if you went to a different type of pump. Now, can you ever rewind the other motor and have that as a backup also? That was my question. Is I know the pump's pretty well get kind of worn. I saw that myself, but the point was, is can you, the motor itself, could you rewind the electrical motor and have that as a backup in case one of the other two happen to go, rather than?
Through your worship, I don't know specifically about the motor, but I believe that's something that they're looking into. Whether we can have things kind of refurbished to have on the shelf as a spare, certainly.
Great, thanks, Councillor Shank. Thanks, Christy. Is there any other questions of Christy with respect to her report or presentation? Councillor Hicks.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Infrastructure Services Waste Diversion Committee, Committee Extension and Member Reappointment beyond December 31st, 2023. And I believe Christy's up again, so go ahead.
Through your worship, I'll just keep this short and sweet, but during our Waste Diversion Committee special session of council, it was indicated that we may look to extending the timeline for the committee and reappoint the members. So what you have before you is a suggestion or a staff recommendation to continue the mandate of the committee beyond the end of this year when it was originally to expire, and just to align that with the term of your council.
Thanks, Christy. Is there any questions of Christy with respect to the Waste Diversion Committee? Councillor Martin.
I don't have any question of Christie, but I would like to make a comment about it. I think there's a lot coming up in the next couple of years that the Waste Diversion Committee is going to have a lot of input into council. So I'm definitely in favor of reappointing the members of this committee.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Martin. Is there anything further? Councillor Hicks.
I move staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. I'm going to agree with Councillor Martin. I know that the last term of council, the Waste Diversion Committee was created well beyond when we created the other committees, and I think they've done some pretty good work. So I think it would benefit us to continue on through to the end of council. So in any event, we do have a motion on the floor. We'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. 2024 council meeting schedule. And I believe, Madam Clerk, that's you.
Through your worship, I believe this report is fairly straightforward, just looking to get ahead of some known scheduling conflicts in January and April. But if there are any other changes in the meeting schedule for 2024 that council would like to consider now, we could do that as well.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Council, is there anything with respect to Jessica's report or her presentation that we want to have a discussion with? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
As well, if we've had one budget meeting, all right, or had, but the point is we're going to go by department. We're going to have a lot more meetings so we can go through this and understand everything, what they're doing by department. All right, because just had the one meeting, and I don't see. I said, like, we had our draft operating November 16th, and we got a draft capital, but there were so many open-ended questions. I have so many more questions on operating alone that are we gonna have, sorry.
Nope. So through your worship, I believe there is some intention from staff that on the December 6th, we hope it will not take us 5 hours to talk about capital. So there is an intention to revisit a few specific outstanding items from the draft operating budget at that meeting. We also are have already scheduled a meeting on January 18th. We fully understand there's a lot to talk about and expect that there will likely be another meeting that needs to happen, but we just thought it might be a little bit preemptive to try to schedule that now. But if there's we thought we'd talk about it on the 6th and see how people felt about the need for 1 or 2 more meetings at that point in time.
That's fine with me with, if you want to do December 6th, but for us to go through the department, because we had an overall high view, but my personal opinion is that we have to give clear direction to staff. All right. So what we should do is go by department. All right. And then discuss that department and give, as by motion, give clear direction to staff, what we want to see, what we don't want to see, what we want to see changed or whatever. And we do by every individual department. Then at the end of the day, we'll have given clear direction to staff, and then everybody will understand what the whole operational budget is. All right. Because we went from one end to the other end the other day. I had a high view, but I had a lot of more questions that I'd like to have answered.
And as Madam Clerk said, Councillor Shank, I think we will be able to flesh that out. And I'm not adverse to having more meetings if we need them. And I do think that you're probably absolutely right. I think the intent of this evening was because there's a conference that we're attending on, hoping to get a delegation at, that we just want to move the regular sessioned meetings. But we most definitely are looking at having more if we need them for a budget. Am I correct with that, Madam Clerk?
Through your worship, that's correct. It was just noted in the report because staff are aware there's probably going to be a request for an additional budget meeting. We can look at sending out some scheduling options in the future here.
Okay. Is there anything else with respect to the presentation or the report? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information the 2024 council meeting schedule report, and further that council approved the following changes to the regular meeting schedule for 2024 by moving the January 23rd meeting to January 30th, 2024 to accommodate the Roma conference, and moving the April 23rd meeting to April 30th to accommodate the Good Roads Conference. Moved by Councillor Pinal, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Growth and expansion, industrial community improvement plan adoption. And I believe, Michael, you're back to the front desk.
Thank you, Worship. This is following on the heels of our public meeting that we held on October 24th to discuss the draft CIP document. At that meeting, staff and council discussed including some additional tiers into the document itself and qualification criteria effectively. So that's been built in to the final version that's in front of council for recommending approval this evening. We also built in additional language around the ability for council to waive on a case-by-case basis when budget may allow for it, but the waiver up to the full amount of development charges. So if there's a very strategic project that council wishes to endorse, there would also be that ability to, on top of the taxation rebating, there would be the ability to rebate a portion of or full amount of development charges as council sees fit. And it's very clear that it's on a case-by-case basis. It's not a given for every project. The authority rests with council to allow for that to go ahead or not on a case-by-case basis. So by and large, the final version is what we had discussed on October 24th. It went through legal review, and there was some additional language that was built in to ensure we're compliant with the Planning Act. And this final version has been well vetted by staff, legal consultant, and Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as well as the County of LNA. So the County of LNA's, I believe they've already passed a bylaw that would allow for them to effectively utilize our CIP for tax rebating for the county portion. So the county needed their bylaw in effect to effectively point to our CIP document that they can then use to, that when we, if we have a very strategic project and council agrees to rebate the town portion of municipal taxes, the county is able to jump in as well to do that. So that's been built in. The county's satisfied with the document as well. And staff are certainly open to answering any questions that council might have. But again, it's more or less right in line with what we discussed at the draft of the public meeting stage, just with some additional language to ensure we're compliant with the Planning Act.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Is there any questions or comments for Michael with respect to his presentation of the report?
I'll move staff recommendation.
Move staff recommendation by Councillor Shank, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws, 9.1, bylaw number 2023-074, being a bylaw to appoint municipal law enforcement officers, night patrol. I know that we have that before us in the report. We'll look for a motion to move it, and then we'll have 3 readings, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Madam Clerk.
I'll move first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks, ready for a second and finally passed this 28th day of November 2023. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaw number 2023-0075, being a bylaw to permanently close and convey an opened municipal bylaw. Once again, Councillor Pennell, you're going to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Norrie. Read it first, second, and finally passed this 28th day of November 2023. There's no further comments, questions, or concerns. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaw number 2023-0076, being a bylaw to deem part of a registered plan number 60 not to be a registered plan of a subdivision. Once again, we've got the information before us. We'll look for a motion to put it on the floor before the readings. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments or questions, yep, go ahead, Councillor Shank, before our final reading. I believe so, if I'm not mistaken. Madam Clerk can comment.
So
to
Mike,
that.
may I ask what you're doing here? It's just that there's so much information. And I know this area like the back of my hand. I've lived there all my life.
Yeah, through your worship, I can start and and the clerk can fill in any blanks, but effectively what we have is a very old plan. Road allowances are still intact. Lots are technically still intact because they haven't been deemed not a subdivision. So they technically exist. It's all in prime ag lands. We wouldn't want to see this ultimately developed for dense residential use. What the overall proposal was for, I can't remember specifically the address, 10775 Highway 33.
Through, I believe it was 10335.
Could be that. Adjacent to Barton's property on the north side. There's a property there, and the intention is to, or which was previously approved, just to essentially separate the house from the balance of the farmland through a series of deeming road allowances no longer roads and part lots to no longer be lots. And then it allowed for the conveyance of the house away, and will then allow for the Bartons to receive lot addition down the road once this is complete.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
The only reason why I was saying is because registered plan number 60, all right, is the R60 subdivision. And R60 subdivision is C. That's where I was coming from, is out near Hay Bay. And that's what they've always called it. So I was going, is there 2 number 60s? Because there's an R60 subdivision right on the corner of the 3rd concession. Say that's where, that's where I was going. Is there a number 60? Like, well, why is there 2 number 60s? You know, and it's 1825, and I'm old, but I'm not that old.
Yeah, there's a difference between plan R60 and subdivision plan 60.
Through your worship, and if I may just add, sorry,
There was a report, the timing didn't work out great. The report came to council back in September, and then there was a bit of a delay at the land registry office in getting the final plan number to get these bylaws before you. But if you're looking for it, I believe it's the September 12th agenda has sort of the mapping that shows exactly what all the issues of the property were.
I own the
that
other
this is
property on
seeking
the
to
opposite
resolve.
side of this place here, and I'm very well familiar with what this is. It's just that I saw two R60s and I'm going, Angela, that was on a Duffstown Township, also understands what I was asking.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Michael. And we've got the motion on the floor. If there's nothing further, we'll read it a first, second, and finally pass this 28th day of November 2023. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaw number 2023-0077 being a bylaw to adopt an industrial community improvement plan, which we've just heard about this evening. Look for motion moved by Councillor Sank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, we'll read it 3 times. Ready, first, second, and finally pass this 28th day of November 2023. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Information reports from members. Do any of the council members have anything that they wish to report with respect to any of their committees or any information that they would have? Sorry, did I see your hand? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver. Yep, we can do that under announcements. So if there's nothing further, we can move down to inquiries. Is there any inquiries that council would like to make that we can have staff look into some things if they wish? Seeing none, notices of motion. Does anyone have any notice of motions this evening? Seeing none, new business. Does anyone have any new business this evening? Seeing none, announcements. And I believe Deputy Mayor Calver has announcements.
Yeah, I would, a couple of things, actually. I would like to thank the Public Works guys and the lights they've been putting up around town and all down through the park. I've seen them on tonight when I come to town. It looks beautiful. Also like to remind everybody the Santa Claus Parade of lights is coming up this Saturday. The first year on the parade committee, I've got to commend the people that are on the committee, the job they do. I had no idea just how in depth everything was to throw a parade together. And I mean, thank God we've got some really good staff that know what they're doing, because I sure don't. And it's coming good. I think everything's all in line. So I'd just like to thank all the staff that's making all of this possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Calver. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just piggyback what the Deputy Mayor has said, is that, and also on behalf of the Parade Committee, I thank you for your kind words. The Parade of Lights will be, of course, December 2nd, starting at 5:30, and the floats will be leaving the Napanee District Secondary School. And we're asking for people to bring a non-perishable food item to donate to the Salvation Army. Also on December 8th, between 5 and 7, there's going to be Light Up the Park. So these lights that the deputy just spoke about in the park will happen December 8th up between 5 and 7. And there will be a 30-minute demonstration at the Pavilion in Conservation Park. And it'll be put on by the North Fire Circus. It's going to be an interesting fire show. And also, so between the two parks, Springside Park and Conservation. So make sure that you walk between the two parks on December 8th. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other announcements? Councillor Hicks.
Through you, Your Worship, I would just like to acknowledge the efforts of the high school welding class that provided all of the frames for the Christmas trees that have been installed downtown. So those all went in on Monday and the trees are up. And I think maybe there's lights on or going on this week. Brant's nodding his head. Thank you. Today. Okay, thanks. I'll pass that on. But yeah, the students, I think it was a learning experience for them. And I'd like to thank Becky Mayer. She was great to work with on Monday. So Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Counselor Hicks. And I did see the lights on the trees. I was coming in today, so they are up. At least some of them anyways, for sure. So,
Slow cruise home tonight.
yep. Is there any other announcements? Counselor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. I see that I forgot to mention that the Light Up the Park is a free event for all to attend. Thank you.
Yep, great. Thanks, Counselor Pennell. Is there anything else? Seeing none, moving on to the forward calendar. I know we've all had an opportunity to take a look at the forward calendar. Did anybody wish to make any comments or ask any questions with respect to the information that's on there? Seeing none, council resolution tracker. Is there anything on the council resolution tracker that council would like to make any comments about or ask any questions of? Seeing none, look for a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of Town of Greater Napanee. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no questions or comments, ready first, second, and finally pass this 28th day of November 2023. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion for adjournment. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks. It's been a long evening already, and we appreciate your patience. So thank you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.